Hello, welcome back to Hobbit-Sized Readings of The Hobbit, narrated by yours truly, Gregory Jean Conrad. Today we continue reading J.R.R. Tolkien's preliminary masterpiece, The Hobbit, with Chapter 7, Queer Lodgings, Part 4. I have been picking out bear tracks, he said at last. There must have been a regular bears' meeting outside here last night. I soon saw that Bjorn could not have made them all. There were far too many of them, and they were of various sizes, too. I should say there were little bears, large bears, ordinary bears, and gigantic big bears, all dancing outside from dark to nearly dawn. They came from almost every direction, except from the west over the river, from the mountains. In that direction, only one set of footprints led, none coming, only ones going away from here. I followed these as far as the Curragh. There they disappeared into the river, but the water was too deep and strong beyond the rock for me to cross. It is easy enough, as you remember, to get from this bank to the Curragh by the ford, but on the other side is a cliff, standing up from a swirling channel. I had to walk miles before I found a place where the river was wide and shallow enough for me to wade and swim, and then miles back again to pick up the tracks again. By that time it was too late for me to follow them far. They went straight off in the direction of the pine woods on the east side of the Misty Mountains, where we had our pleasant little party with the wargs the night before last. And now I think I have answered your first question too, ended Gandalf, and he sat a long while silent. Bilbo thought he knew what the wizard meant. "What shall we do?" he cried. "If he leads all the wargs and the goblins down here, we shall all be caught and killed. I thought you said he was not a friend of theirs." "So I did, and don't be silly. You had better go to bed. Your wits are sleepy." The hobbit felt quite crushed, and as there seemed nothing else to do, he did go to bed. And while the dwarfs were still singing songs, he dropped asleep, still puzzling his little head about Bjorn, till he dreamed a dream of hundreds of black bears dancing slow, heavy dances round and round in the moonlight in the courtyard. Then he woke up when everyone else was asleep, and he heard the same scraping, scuffling, snuffling, and growling as before. Next morning they were all awakened by Bjorn himself. "So here you all are still," he said. He picked up the hobbit and laughed. "Not eaten up by wargs or goblins or wicked bears yet, I see." And he poked Mr. Baggins's waistcoat most disrespectfully. "Little Bunny is getting nice and fat again on bread and honey," he chuckled. "Come and have some more." So they all went to breakfast with him. Bjorn was most jolly for a change. Indeed, he seemed to be in a splendidly good humor, and set them all laughing with his funny stories. Nor did they have to wonder long where he had been or why he was so nice to them, for he told them himself. He had been over the river and right back up into the mountains, from which you can guess that he could travel quickly, in bear shape at any rate. From the burnt wolf glade he had soon found out that part of their story was true. But he had found out more than that. He had caught a warg and a goblin wandering in the woods. From these he had got news. The goblin patrols were still hunting with wargs for the dwarves, and they were fiercely angry because of the death of the great goblin, and also because of the burning of the chief wolf's nose, and the death from the wizard's fire of many of his chief servants. So much they told him when he forced them, but he guessed there was more wickedness than this afoot, and that a great raid of the whole goblin army with their wolf allies into the land shadowed by the mountains might soon be made to find the dwarves, or to take vengeance on the men and creatures that lived there and who they thought must be sheltering them. "It was a good story, that of yours," said Bjorn, "but I like it still better now I am sure it is true. You must forgive me for not taking your word. If you lived near the edge of Mirkwood, you would take the word of no one that you did not know as well as your brother or better. As it is, I can only say that I have hurried home as fast as I could to see that you were safe, and to offer you any help that I can. I shall think more kindly of dwarves after this. Killed the great goblin! Killed the great goblin!" He chuckled fiercely to himself. "What did you do with the goblin and the warg?" asked Bilbo suddenly. "Come and see," said Bjorn, and they followed round the house. A goblin's head was stuck outside the gate, and the warg's skin was nailed to a tree just beyond. Bjorn was a fierce enemy, but now he was their friend, and Gandalf thought it wise to tell him the whole story and the reason of their journey, so that he could get the most help he could offer. This is what he promised to do for them. He would provide ponies for each of them and a horse for Gandalf for their journey to the forest, and he would lade them with food to last them for weeks with care, and packed so as to be as easy as possible to carry: nuts, flour, sealed jars of dried fruits, and red earthenware pots of honey, and twice baked cakes that would keep a good long time, and on a little of which they could march far. The making of these was one of his secrets, but honey was in them, as in most of his foods, and they were good to eat, though they made one thirsty. Water, he said, they would not need to carry this side of the forest, for there were streams and springs along the ford. "But your way through Mirkwood is dark, dangerous, and difficult," he said. "Water is not easy to find there, nor food. The time is not yet come for nuts, though it may be past and gone indeed before you get to the other side. The nuts are about all that grows there fit for food, and there the wild things are dark, queer, and savage. I will provide you with skins for carrying water, and I will give you some bows and arrows. But I doubt very much whether anything you find in Mirkwood will be wholesome to eat or to drink. There is one stream there, I know, black and strong, which crosses the path. That you should neither drink of nor bathe in, for I have heard that it carries enchantment, and a great drowsiness and forgetfulness, and in the dim shadows of that place I don't think you will shoot anything, wholesome or unwholesome, without straying from the path. That you must not do, for any reason. That is all the advice I can give you. Beyond the edge of the forest I cannot help you much. You must depend on your luck and your courage and the food I send with you. At the gate of the forest I must ask you to send back my horse and my ponies. But I wish you all speed, and my house is open to you if ever you come back this way again." They thanked him, of course, with many bows and sweepings of the hoods, and with many an "at your service, O master of the wide wooden halls." But their spirits sank at his grave words, and they all felt that the adventure was far more dangerous than they had thought, while all the time, even if they had passed all the perils of the road, the dragon was waiting at the end. All that morning they were busy with preparations. Soon after midday they ate with Bjorn for the last time, and after the meal they mounted the steeds he was lending them, and bidding him many farewells, they rode off through his gate at a good pace. As soon as they left his high hedges at the east of his fenced lands, they turned north, and then bore to the northwest. By his advice, they were no longer making for the main forest road to the south of his land. Had they followed the pass, their path would have led them down a stream from the mountains that join the great river miles south of the Curragh. At that point there was a deep ford which they might have passed, if they still had their ponies, and beyond that a track led to the skirts of the woods, and to the entrance of the old forest road. But Bjorn had warned them that that way was now often used by the goblins, while the forest road itself, he had heard, was overgrown and disused at the eastern end, and led to impassable marshes, where the paths had long been lost. Its eastern opening had also always been far to the south of the lonely mountain, and would have left them still with a long and difficult northward march when they got to the other side. North of the Curragh, the edge of Mirkwood drew closer to the borders of the great river, and though here the mountains too drew down nearer, Bjorn advised them to take this way. For at a place a few days' ride due north of the Curragh was the gate of a little known pathway through Mirkwood that led almost straight towards the lonely mountain. That's it for today. Join us next time as we continue to bring some Tolkienian cheer to your quarantine despair with The Hobbit Chapter 7, Queer Lodgings Part 5. Until then, Pelo Nalu Ilais and Galad Gwylin. May the leaves of your life tree never wither. See you soon.